Have you ever sat with someone and listened to their story, listened to them telling an experience they've had, and it's so precise, it's so crafted, it's so real, and you've wondered how have they been able to describe that? How have they been able to, bring someone into that journey they've been on in a way that really brings it to life, that makes it feel like you're on that journey as well, that you have actually walked in their footsteps and been able to see everything they see. How do people remember that? How do they think about that? How do they, piece those different things together across their life or across an experience in a way that makes sense? Well, in this video, I want to talk to you about how a capture system and a tool for capturing over a period of time gives you the power of being able to actually link those things together and tell your story. And what I want to do in this video is get really practical and think through some different scenarios, different types of situations where you might want to tell a story or describe a journey that you've been on, and show you and describe how capturing can really allow you to do that. And you might be wondering, when I'm talking about capture and capture systems, what I mean by that. So a quick recap on this. I've done a video which you can see here, so if you do want to go and have a look at it, that video is about how to set up a capture system. But a quick recap, a capture system is basically a system that you've created to capture things in your life. So that could be things like tasks, it could be ideas, it could be inspiration, it could be things you've seen, it could be inputs that you've had in your life, different people's comments, different spiritual input maybe, but it's all the things that kind of in your life, and you've figured out a way to capture those things and you've systemized it. It's something that's sustainable, that happens over a long period of time. So that video gives you a bit of an insight into how I would recommend setting up a capture system. But in this video, I want to talk to you about how that enables you to tell your story, how that enables you to describe the journey that you've been on in a variety of different situations. So the first situation or scenario that I want to talk about is idea development. So let's take a specific example. Let's say you have a song that you've written or a piece of music that you've written, and it's taken maybe like 6 months, a year to actually develop this song. Now, you could just present that song as it is, but what would be really powerful is to actually be able to describe how that song came from a first idea into what it is today. So you can hear the finished track, right? You can hear this beautiful piece of music. But what I think is really interesting is if you're able to describe how that came about, where the initial idea landed, where the things changed, where they evolved, where they developed over time, and how it became what it is today. So that's a specific scenario where you can see actually if you captured all the way along that journey, then when you get to the end of the journey, or you get to a point in the journey, you could go back and pull those different pieces together and start to describe the journey and the story of how you got to where you are today. So really powerful, and I think brings people into the process of what you've created. Because if you share the piece of music, let's say, or you share the book that you've written, or you share the piece of artwork that you've created, then you can also share the story of how you got there. And that really brings your audience into the process, not just the result. So I think really powerful. So that's the first scenario that you can see where actually capturing along the way gives you the power to tell the story of how you got to a result. The next scenario or the situation that I want to talk about is habit development. And you might not really think about this very much. You might not really think about how actually over time you develop different habits, or you grow in different ways, or you become a different person based upon what you do. But you do. You do become different as you do different things. And if you track the things that you do, if you track the habits that you're trying to form, what it allows you to do at the end of that journey, or at a point in that journey, because I think we're all moving towards, a new destination all the time, it does give you the power to actually look back and say, oh, I can see that 2 years ago I did this thing once a week, but now I do it 5 times a week and I've become much stronger in it. Let's say fitness, for example. Like, I never did any exercise, but now 5 years later, I do exercise 5, 6, 7 times a week. And you can show and describe to people how you got there. So they might ask you, how did you become so fit? How did you become so good at exercising? How did you get that consistency in your life? And you can go back and say, okay, well look, 3 years ago, I made this change in my routine, and that allowed me to get more consistency. And then I brought different diet things in, and then I did this, and then I signed up for this gym, and then I did it in a collaborative way with this person. And you can describe how you got there. So it's not just, someone looks at you and says, oh, it's unachievable. You can say, no, it's not unachievable. Let me show you how I got to this place that I'm in today. So habit development can be a really interesting scenario where capturing, as you can see, along the journey allows you to look back and then lead other people through that same process with you. So again, another really powerful example of how capturing along the journey gives you the power to then look back and describe where you've come from. And then kind of linked to that would be personal development. And what I want to really focus on here is, I used to think this way, or I used to be like this, but now I'm like this. As you go through life, you change, right? You become different, you develop as a person. But like I said in the last example, there may be people who ask you, well, how have you done that? How have you become settled and at peace? How have you become content? How have you resolved those anger issues you had maybe? Or how have you developed this relational ability? How have you done that? Like, can you describe that to me? Now, if you haven't captured any of that process, you may forget it, or you might not know really how to describe that journey that you've been on. You know you've been on it, but you can't really describe it. So capturing as you go, again, gives you the power to describe your story. And you can say, I once thought this, or I once acted like this, but now I act like this. And let me tell you how I got there. The things that shifted in my mentalities, the way that I thought differently, the conversations that had an input into my process and actually caused me to think in a different way. And you can describe those things with very real details that actually make a lot of sense. So you can, again, lead people through a similar process. You'll see a theme here, right? The ability for you to then share what you've learned with other people, and how a capture system and a way for capturing over time gives you that power to go back and describe effectively to other people and bring people into the process. So personal development, really powerful. The ability to say, I once was this, now I'm this, and this is how this happened. Very, very, very powerful. Another area is family development. And what I mean by this really is the journey that you have been on as a family, or that your family has been on. So I'm a dad, I'm married, I have 2 kids, and what I want to be able to do when they get to 18, or at any point in their life really, is to be able to describe to them the journey that we as a family have been on. Not just the events, but the things that were important, the things that changed the trajectory of our family. An example for us very recently is that we moved from the UK to the US. That's a big marker moment in my family's life. And for my kids who are quite young, they might not remember that, but that's a really big shift for them in terms of the trajectory of their lives. So being able to capture that somehow, being able to record those things. A lot of people do it through photo albums, right? The ability to see where you've come from is really powerful for then creating a journey and a story of your family that then is owned by your children, or you own it because your parents passed it on to you. So it really helps with understanding who you are, and for your kids, them understanding what they've grown up in, and making sense of why they think in certain ways, or what their experiences have been that might influence who they are today. So family development, I think, is really, really interesting. And again, another example of where capturing over time and recording over time can provide this background, or this context, or this history for your family that they might not otherwise have, they might not know or be conscious of, and can really give them strength and sight and stability going forward because they know where they've come from. And lastly, I want to talk about spiritual development. And you might not feel like this applies to you, but I think there's principles in this that apply even if you're not a spiritual person, even if you don't have faith. I'm a Christian, so this is part of my life and a big part of my life. But I think it's really powerful, similar to personal development, to be able to say, I once believed this, or I once thought this, but now I think this. Or I once struggled with this, but now I don't struggle with this. And this is the journey that I've been on to resolve those things. But also God's input into those things. So God might have said something, or you might have had a spiritual revelation at some point in your life. And then 10 years down the line, you realize, oh, that was said over there, but actually that's being resolved here. Or this prayer that I made at this point in my life, it's been answered 5 years later. And you can make those connections and link those things together. I've found that personally to be incredibly powerful, because I can track and record and see the journey that God has led me on over many, many years. And it's brought a lot of faith and encouragement to me, because I can see the way that God has led me, and it gives me confidence and boldness going forward, because I know where I've been, I know how I've been led, and therefore I can trust in the future and have confidence and hope in the future. So having a record of your spiritual journey, although it might not be the forefront of your mind, can be a really powerful thing. And similar to like the idea development or personal development, it gives you that ability to get into the very detail of what was said or what you thought or the way you approach things, and then be able to see where you are today and be able to tell the story of how you got to where you are today. So the power of a journey is a real thing. Seeing where you've come from, being able to describe the journey you've come from, doesn't just bring strength to you, but also brings strength to other people, can resource other people, because you can describe how you journeyed from one point to another, and you can lead people through that as well. If you like this video, if you're interested in these things, please like, subscribe, and comment on this video with any thoughts that you have. I'd love to hear from you. Thanks for watching.